Sí, ¿no? Bueno, buenas a todos y a todas. Mi nombre es Carla Alcalá, soy soy diseñadora industrial e investigadora artística y este año he tenido la oportunidad de ser una de las residentes de los proyectos de investigación situada en Medellín Matadero. Mi investigación propone una visión diferente sobre las tecnologías Web3, que no se basa en la especulación económica ni en los sistemas de tokens, sino que promueve el cuidado de ecosistemas y la participación de comunidades. Lo que hoy vengo a presentar es un prototipo llamado Holy Bacter DAO, formado como grupo de investigación, grupo de trabajo de Media Lab, en el que participan Esther Rizo, Javier Torres, Lara Bani, Natalia Recalde y Tico Fuentes, y que trata de hacer una reflexión sobre las cuestiones que he mencionado. Supongo que habrá gente preguntándose qué es una organización autónoma descentralizada, o DAO, y a estas alturas del proyecto me lo sigo preguntando. Según Vitalik Buterin, uno de los creadores de Ethereum, en 2014 una DAO podía describirse como una organización capitalizada en la que un protocolo de software informa su funcionamiento, situando la automatización en su centro y a los humanos en sus bordes. En 2023, ahora que las DAOs se empiezan a poner en práctica, el foco ya no está en la automatización, sino en la gobernanza. En Holy Bacter nos quedamos con la descripción que Key Krudler hace sobre las DAOs como asociaciones voluntarias con los principios operativos del cooperativismo digital. Aunque, como veréis a lo largo de la presentación, nuestro proyecto se extiende más allá de la dimensión digital para abrir las puertas a una realidad mucho más híbrida. Holy Bacter se define como un colectivo interdisciplinar autoconcebido como DAO, que se fundamenta en las prácticas rituales, la biología sintética y las tecnologías descentralizadas como pilares para la imaginación de futuros interespecie. Nuestro primer caso de estudio se centra en las celdas de combustible microbianas, en el tratamiento sostenible de aguas residuales y la generación de bioenergía. En este contexto hemos creado un escenario en el que nuestra comunidad DAO convive con una mitología sobre las bacterias electroactivas que nos permite verlas más allá de una perspectiva puramente funcional. Nuestra mitología se articula en torno a tres ejes, que son el anoxigenismo o el sistema de creencias, el sistema metabólico electroactivo o la infraestructura física y la máquina oráculo o el portal digital. Dentro de la creación de nuestra mitología, nos pareció importante estudiar las posibles evidencias científicas de los orígenes de las bacterias electroactivas, así como los posibles mitos populares asociados a ellas. Se dice que estas bacterias podrían haber existido hace 4,5 billones de años, cuando no había oxígeno libre en la Tierra. En su metabolismo estrictamente anaerobio, estas son capaces de respirar minerales en lugar de oxígeno, transformando la energía química de la materia orgánica en energía eléctrica. Esto les permitió vivir cómodamente hasta el gran evento de oxidación, lo que provocó que las bacterias electroactivas se unieran a otras anaerobias por endosimbiosis o se aislaran en entornos carentes de oxígeno. Pensamos en estas bacterias aisladas en el subsuelo, los pantanos o el fondo marino como fuerzas terrenales chónicas, entidades que Donna Haraway llama monstruos en el mejor de los sentidos. Desde los mitos de la antigua Grecia o en un contexto local, el folclore de la península ibérica, estas bacterias convivieron con otros seres como dragones, serpientes, brujas e incluso diosas y vírgenes. Si la creencia en el mito termina cuando aparece el descubrimiento científico, con las bacterias electroactivas esto ocurrió en 1988, cuando se encontraron en sedimentos acuáticos del río Potomac y el lago Oneida dos tipos de bacterias, Geobacter y Shigella, responsables de la rápida tasa de reducción de los lagos y el río, de los metales del agua. Desde entonces, estos microorganismos han servido de modelo para los estudios en el campo de las tecnologías electroquímicas microbianas, que estimulan el metabolismo de las bacterias electroactivas para la producción de energía, la biorremediación y el desarrollo de biosensores. Como ya he mencionado, Holy Bacter no trata de relacionarse con estas tecnologías de una forma puramente utilitaria, sino que busca crear reflexión y cultura. Y para ello decidimos construir este mito con sus rituales, supersticiones y creencias. Con la comunidad de Media Lab nos hemos estado acercando a los cuerpos de agua del sur de Madrid. Y a lo largo de los meses hemos estado construyendo un archivo de narrativas con las que hemos trabajado para desarrollar el sistema de creencias de Holy Bacter. Como ya he mencionado, Holy Bacter, bueno, no voy a desvelar mucho más sobre el anoxigenismo, porque habréis tenido y tendréis la oportunidad de verlo en directo, o lo habréis visto ya. Pero como parte del proyecto performamos una serie de ofrendas a las bacterias, un ritual de transformación de materia contaminada, una ingesta de fermentos con un tipo de bacteria electroactiva y también desarrollamos un lenguaje de comunicación con ellas. Y esto, bueno, es parte de lo que podéis ver en la exposición. Bueno, esto sería el primer eje de Holy Bacter, los rituales. El segundo eje de Holy Bacter es lo que hemos llamado sistema metabólico electroactivo, que se refiere a la tecnología física en cuestión. Si las bacterias electroactivas en su estado natural trasladan electrones a minerales tan comunes como el hierro, lo que se hace en las tecnologías electroquímicas microbianas es hacer que las bacterias trasladen estos electrones a electrodos que permiten la circulación de corriente. Con estas tecnologías, digamos que se trata de controlar el metabolismo de las bacterias electroactivas para obtener outputs de valor para las comunidades humanas, como podrían ser nutrientes, agua tratada o electricidad. Y los inputs, pues, podrían ser tanto orina como otros tipos de aguas, por ejemplo, de la ducha o aguas fecales o cualquier tipo de agua con materia orgánica. Desde Holy Bacter nos interesan estas tecnologías, pero buscamos pensarlas más allá del término de celda de combustible microbiana, que es el nombre científico que se le da a las biopilas. Dentro del campo de la biología sintética se utiliza mucho el término fábrica de celdas para referirse a los organismos modificados metabólicamente con el objetivo de producir de forma sostenible sustancias para fines humanos. Pensamos que este término pone demasiado foco en la máquina y muy poco en el organismo, y es por ello que preferimos llamarlo sistema metabólico electroactivo, a modo de reflejar la complejidad de esta tecnología híbrida. Bueno, además de los lenguajes y las prácticas rituales que hemos ido desarrollando, pensamos que también era importante fijarse en la materialidad de la biopila. Y es por eso que parte de la investigación se ha centrado en trabajar con un material que se mira poco dentro de un contexto de producción industrial, que es la cerámica negra. Este tipo de cerámica se obtiene a partir de un proceso de cocción en una atmósfera reductora. Combina las cualidades de la cerámica con las de los materiales ricos en carbono, dando lugar a un material con propiedades electroactivas que es beneficioso para este tipo de bacterias. El hecho de trabajar con materiales como la cerámica negra, aparte de que es un material más sostenible y barato que los que se utilizan comúnmente en las biopilas, también abre las puertas a colaborar con comunidades con las que normalmente no se piensa dentro del universo de la biología sintética. En este caso en concreto, trabajamos con unos talleres de cerámica de Cataluña que llevan cociendo cerámica con hornos de leña básicamente toda la vida. Por último, compartir que parte del proceso de testeo de estos sistemas los trabajamos con la microbióloga Paula Guerrero, con quien realizamos unos cultivos de bacterias potencialmente electroactivas con muestras de agua extraída de las propias biopilas. Bueno, tenemos un sistema físico con el que intercambiar recursos, una mitología a partir de la cual desarrollar los rituales con los que relacionarse con las biopilas, ¿Cómo diseñamos el sistema de gobernanza para la DAO? Antes de adentrarme en el sistema, me gustaría compartir que este es un concepto iniciado durante el curso Demon and Discord, impartido por Jay Springett y Ross McElwain en The New Center for Research, quien, por cierto, se conectará en breves para hablarnos más sobre las DAOs, y que bueno, el curso tenía por objetivo diseñar una DAO hipotética para 2035. Mi apuesta fue imaginar Holy Bacter como un sistema de gobernanza en el cual la interacción con las biopilas estaba regulada a través de una DAO. Esto incluía un rito de paso, un sistema de intercambio de tokens y una red descentralizada que conectaba a las diferentes comunidades locales que se quisieran asociar a Holy Bacter DAO. Este concepto inicial, que hemos llamado oráculo interbacteriano, lo hemos empezado a testear con el grupo de trabajo basado en estas premisas. Tenemos un sistema metabólico con el que interactúa una comunidad local, al cual se le otorga orina humana. Por el momento, el output con el que trabajaremos será la producción de energía, con la que alimentaremos un servidor y recogeremos datos del agua de la biopila. Cuando de repente otras comunidades que interactúen con sus propios sistemas metabólicos estén interesadas en unirse a la DAO, podríamos empezar a crear una red conectada de servidores que mantuvieran esto a lo que hemos llamado oráculo interbacteriano. ¿Y qué es el oráculo interbacteriano? Basándonos en las ideas desarrolladas por Alan Turing y Stafford Beer, entendemos el oráculo como una máquina conectada a las bacterias electroactivas de manera significativa, en un bucle de retroalimentación entre sistemas automatizados y vivos que les permitan alcanzar una especie de equilibrio. Nuestro oráculo está inspirado en otras máquinas oráculo que han existido en el pasado, como son la fábrica cibernética de Stafford Beer, quien propuso entender los estanques como ordenadores biológicos a partir de los cuales diseñar fábricas adaptativas, la Ammoniac de Bill Phillips, un sistema hidráulico como un ordenador analógico diseñado para entender los funcionamientos de la economía, o el proyecto Pattern Recognition in a Bucket, que demostraba cómo las ondas de la superficie del agua podían ser usadas como un sistema para procesar datos, por ejemplo, para el reconocimiento de voz. El oráculo interbacteriano de Holy Bacter es un trabajo en proceso, el cual requeriría conseguir que cada sistema metabólico electroactivo generara la suficiente energía como para poder alimentar a un pequeño servidor. Pero por el momento hemos estado trabajando en una pieza que ya se alimenta de una serie de datos generados por las biopilas y que pretende hacer la función que siempre han hecho los oráculos, que es ofrecer profecía y orientación. En el imaginario de Holy Bacter, este oráculo es responsivo a los cuidados y las ofrendas de aguas residuales de las diferentes comunidades con las que interactúa. Y por tanto está en contacto directo con los metabolismos tanto humanos como bacterianos. Y bueno, no me voy a extender mucho porque al terminar la presentación de Ross os vamos a invitar a que interactuéis con el oráculo, pero básicamente lo que hace es dar una respuesta a aquello que le quieras preguntar, influenciada por el estado actual de la biopila, si está generando más o menos energía, el nivel de contaminación del agua, etc. Y bueno, muchas gracias por atender y le voy a ceder el turno a Ross McElwain. Hi, Ross.
Hello. Hi there. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we hear you.
Okay, great.
Perdona, just one second. Esta parte la vamos a hacer en inglés. Yeah. You
Good
ready?
to go?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, great. Hello. And wonderful and fascinating presentation, Carla. I tried to follow as best I can. My Spanish isn't quite as good as it once was. But luckily you had already sent me the English text. So I got a chance to read it a couple of days ago and recognize what you were saying just now. And yeah, I'm very pleased to be invited here today. I don't know if there's any form of live translation of my contribution, but I'll try to go not too fast and explain certain things as I go on.
Amazing.
I want to say a quick thank you to Talia Porter first, who helped me to research and prepare this talk. Okay, so to introduce myself first, my name is Ross McElwain, as Carla said, and I co-run a press called Impossible Object in the UK. That is a publisher of books of philosophy, fiction, and a few other genres, including dialogues on contemporary theory. And we're also interested in crypto and Web3. As I think I heard Carla mention, last year I organized a seminar with Jay Springett, which we called Daemon and Discord, Anatomy of the DAO. This was conceived of as a speculative design seminar for decentralized autonomous organizations, and Carla was a participant with the early version of Holy Bacter DAO that she presented some of in her talk just now. DAOs are an idea that is more or less as old as crypto itself. To recycle a description of DAOs that Jay and I gave in our paper, Hybrid Realities, a DAO is a predominantly online community that performs its governance functions mainly on the blockchain and which may or may not require human beings to be at its center. At one extreme, the Bitcoin or Ethereum networks can be considered DAOs, while at the other, a group convened solely to collectively purchase an NFT can also call itself a DAO. This makes the scope of the DAO as an organizational form and indeed as a design space very wide, and means that it can encompass many very different and even contradictory types of organization. It surprises some to hear of Bitcoin referred to as a DAO, but in many respects, it is the very model of an entity that is decentralized, autonomous, and organized. Ralph Merkle even notoriously went so far as to call Bitcoin a new form of life. Of course, if Bitcoin is a new form of life, it is not a benign one. It is less like the Geobacter in Holy Bacter DAO, or the plants at the heart of Terra Zero's various projects, and more like the daemon in the sci-fi novel that Vitalik Buterin claimed inspiration from in his early theorizing about DAOs, a vast network of human and non-human agents that exhibits a unique rapacity in pursuing its aim to consume and control more and more and more. The main difference is that where the daemon in Daniel Suarez's book is super intelligent, Bitcoin is, in Jay's memorable description, super stupid. Incidentally, Vitalik has done some of the most systematic and succinct theorizing on DAOs, notably in his paper, DAOs, DACs, DAs, and more, an incomplete terminology guide, which is well worth a read. And the speculative design aspect of our seminar very much took its cue from the debt that Vitalik acknowledges to Daemon. We felt that with a few major exceptions, much thinking about DAOs, especially on Twitter and in the crypto sphere, tended to focus on technical and theoretical questions at the expense of embracing a fictive dimension that could play a role in keeping the scope of the design space as broad and wild as possible. I caught a stray reference before, by the way, to Key Krutler, and I would definitely put Key's work among the exceptions to thinking about DAOs that I was referring to just then. So on Daemon and Discord, we were interested in investigating the theory behind DAOs, but we were also interested in imagining in great detail the kinds of futures they might operate in, specifically possible futures that might come into being in stronger or weaker forms over the next 10 to 15 years. And this is where our watchword trouble came in. Taking a lead from Donna Haraway, we encouraged participants to locate something troubling or even offensive about the idea of their DAO or the future that it took place in, and not to turn away from it, but to lean into it. The idea, or the hope, was to stress test the notion of DAOs by projecting it into some reasonably extreme futures, and also to try to see what the environments would be where it might be quite surprisingly and uniquely at home. In the seminar, we agreed that some of the most successful DAOs, or at least the ones that are the most successful at being DAOs, are the ones where there is a very tight link between the technology they use to perform their activities and their central purpose. This means that, for example, they might hold binding on-chain votes where owners of governance tokens vote in order to make decisions about what the DAO plans to achieve. And these are then implemented at the level of code in smart contracts. For better or for worse, DAOs that have to do with decentralized finance often fall most neatly into this category, in that they are often able to do what they do trustlessly, purely online, and without reliance on centralized entities, because smart contracts replace the middleman in a variety of activities. They include buying and selling currency, administering loans, and so on. I say for better or for worse, because it is perhaps a little sad that the most effective DAOs are also often the most purely online and the most financialized. A common and important critique of crypto is that the more capitalist-informed sides of it have a tendency to financialize everything. I agree that where this takes place, a lot of the more valuable parts of this sphere can tend to become overcoded by speculation and marketization. This is particularly pertinent in relation to any applications of crypto to nature or care for the environment, in the sense that the market views the environment, along with human happiness and any number of vital intangibles, as externalities, because they cannot become subject to a price signal, at least not without being transformed in the process. Regenerative finance, or ReFi, which names a branch of crypto that tries to mitigate environmental damage by, for example, intervening in the carbon credit market, often makes the fundamental mistake of leaning further into market forces, albeit usually with the best of intentions. Happily, financialization isn't the only way crypto can engage with the offline world. I draw a distinction between this and tokenization, which is the creation of tokens on the blockchain to represent real-world assets or to make possible certain legal or quasi-legal statuses. Tokens needn't be financial in nature or only financial. The project A Tree, a Corporation, a Person by the Berlin-based TerraZero, a collective whose work has an affinity with Carla's. In that project, tokenization is a crucial linkage in the chain whereby a tree can become a legally autonomous entity that owns the land it lives on. As part of the 58th Carnegie International Art Exhibition, TerraZero worked to gain 501c4 status for a black gum tree, a legal vehicle usually reserved for lobbying organizations, and after an initial period of care by the Carnegie Museum of Art, the tree will begin minting non-fungible tokens, which can be sold to cover some or all of the costs of keeping the 501c4 operational. There is something very impressive both about the idea of a self-owning tree and about the sheer practical and legal achievement that it represents. Viewed from a certain angle, it would seem to symbolize the crypto dream, autonomy. The entity that by one means or another is eventually reliant on no one and nothing to be able to secure its existence, and in a way that refuses the more toxic option as represented by Bitcoin. But that vision of autonomy is also a disquieting idea and is one of the innumerable contradictions of crypto, partly because of ideological compatibility between that conception of autonomy and various strains of libertarianism, and partly because, like the free market notion that nature is an externality, it is a distortion and a falsification that anyone, anything, can stand alone. Again, we are fortunate that projects like TerraZero and Holy Bacter DAO do not make it their aim to deploy the affordances of crypto in support of supposedly autonomous and independent communities of entities, whether human or non-human, but interdependent ones. Interdependence is a figure of thought that is connected, on the one hand, to solidarity. I fight for you because I believe it is right, not because I expect you to reciprocate, although I hope that when the time comes, you will. And on the other, to companionship, which is another important term of Donna Haraway's. A companion is someone or something you break bread with, cum panis, whom you depend on for there to be bread to break in the first place. In a tree, a corporation, a person, it is a collective of human and non-human agents working together continuously that achieves the desired aim. In TerraZero's other project, Seed Capital, one can mint a certificate of care for a plant, but only if one is directly present with the plant while caring for it, and if all the plant's needs, as measured by various sensors, are met. To pull together a few of the main threads so far in relation to Holy Bacter DAO, I want to talk about it in relation to trouble and to companionship. I wouldn't say that there is anything troubling about the conception and structure of Holy Bacter DAO in itself. As with seed capital and a tree, a corporation, a person, the attempt to create a space for the emergence of new relations between human and non-human is straightforwardly laudable. There is trouble in the novel mythology of anoxygenism, in the sense that trouble is an inherent part of any attempt to forge a mythology. On that point, I'm thinking about Claude Lévi-Strauss's definition of myth as something that doesn't and can't answer all the questions asked of it, but makes one impossible question correspond with another. The questions, in this case, being tragic ones relating to the truth of the origin of life and its gradual endangerment. Anoxygenism commemorates the deep past while reorienting our thought towards a cooperative present and pointing the way to an increasingly oxygen-poor future. Maybe the most troubling aspect of Holy Bacter DAO is how plausible its vision of the future is. I would frame this partly in terms of the ruined ecological horizon it points towards, that I think we can all recognize as a present rather than a future reality, but also in terms of the role that ritual plays in the DAO. The conjunction that it creates between human, non-human, and technology is one that is recognizable in sacred rituals going back millennia. But this conjunction is one that has hitherto had little place within increasingly virtual modes of life and the ideology of virtuality espoused by many in the crypto space. The idea that life IRL steadily becomes more and more of an externality to various types of electronic transactions. It's one of several components of the ideology of crypto, if there is such a thing, alongside the idea that solving a problem on the blockchain is enough to declare it satisfactorily solved, rather than putting in the necessary work of critique or of strenuous real-world spade work. You sometimes encounter a Promethean conviction within crypto that almost any problem is theoretically solvable in this way, although human history would suggest otherwise. Recently, the notion of the network state has acted as something of a lightning rod in this way. Yet some problems, the deepest and most uncertain ones, are not solvable or even conceivable via technology alone. In a paper on divination and chance, Miguel Prado Casanova reminds us of Malinowski's observation that the Trobriand islanders rarely employed rituals when fishing in reliable and safe lagoons, preferring to report their achievements there in terms of purely technical expertise. Conversely, when fishing in the deep sea, where the environment is characterized by uncertainty and risk, exhaustive rituals were performed in anticipation. We live in a world of risk, even of X risk. And for me, the centrality of ritual in Holy Bacter DAO is a marker of this. To address companionship briefly before concluding, I'm adding that term here alongside Carla's preferred figure of cooperation. For me, the place where companionship is most present in Holy Bacter DAO is in the exchange and circulation of wastewater. I've said that companionship derives from the notion of breaking bread. And in this schema, the wastewater is the bread that is broken. Quite beautifully, the vital substance for each organism is the waste product of the other. I'm going to end there. There are more things I would have liked to address, but hopefully we can get into those a little bit during the Q&A. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Ross. I think we'll open the Q&A both in English and Spanish. Feel free to throw questions, and if it's in Spanish, I will translate to Ross. Tico.
Hi, Ross. I will do my question first in Spanish, and then we can translate it in English just briefly. Okay, thanks. Con español. Mi pregunta era sobre cómo dentro de todo el ecosistema, tanto de DAOs como de interacciones que hay en Holy Bacter, veo que está todo como muy anonimizado. Es decir, en el ritual se ve que la gente lleva las caras tapadas, uno de los medios de interacción son las DAOs, que al estar descentralizadas, pues cada persona desde su ordenador interactuando, e incluso las propias bacterias pues son un ente del cual pues no hemos definido unas características de personalidad, ¿no? Entonces veo como que hay muchas dificultades de cara a generar como esas redes de afecto que te puedan llegar a motivar a actuar de una manera. En el contexto de futuro, tal y como está explicado, que es el de una escasez de agua, sí que tiene un sentido interactuar en tanto a, oye, hay una interdependencia, lo hago por supervivencia. Lo hago con unas lógicas distintas, que no son esas de producción, sin embargo, porque vamos a actuar con esas lógicas si ni siquiera le tenemos como ese cariño o no somos capaces de generar rituales o interacciones que nos relacionen más como de tú a tú o desde una identidad a otra identidad. Now in English, way more briefly. My question was about like how can affection play a role in this kind of relationships, since they all seem to be very anonymous. Like in the DAOs, like for example, you said that the more successful ones are those that are more decentralized and are more about financials. But in this case, affection plays a big role once you are not talking only about survival and about I need this bacteria to clean my water and produce energy. So is there a way that affection or feeling friendship or some kind of more emotional, intimate relationship can work in this ecosystem of DAOs and interspatial relationships? Thanks.
It's a really good question. Do you want to go first, Carla? You go first.
I mean, so I think it actually is a question, no? Like, does it really work, this idea of affection within DAOs? I think, like, from what I've seen, but probably Ross will know way more about this, is like, as Ross shared, many of the DAOs are still they still really grew in a kind of refi context. And I think the projects that look for this kind of affection, there are kind of concepts or like speculations still, no? So I don't know, like, I don't know if you see, Ross, would you really see these kind of projects like really being enacted outside of kind of artistic or experimental practice? Do you have any example of them?
I don't know if I have any specific examples, but I mean, when you say affection, I'm guessing what you mean is you're talking about something that is not just transaction, right? So it's actually enjoying other people's presence and friendship and care, and you mean that kind of thing? Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, it's, I think the first thing that my mind goes to when you talk about that is more to do with the way that people interact in Discord servers, for example, and this is an interesting question because it's, strictly speaking, that kind of interaction is not at the heart of DAOs. I mean, I was giving the example of, decentralized finance because to me that is, if you go by Vitalik's rules, that is, some of the most kind of pure operation of DAOs. But it's also quite a kind of cold and inhuman kind of application of, of that kind of idea. But then, you also have this whole sphere of human interaction that takes place in Discord servers, for example. I mean, just, I don't know, some of you may be aware of Trust, Trust.support. That is a Berlin-based organization that isn't exactly a DAO. It's not really a DAO, but does have a very lively Discord community. And the kind of the practices that people use to build, I guess, a kind of kinship within a Discord like Trust, or indeed in various other Discords, which involves sharing memes and emojis and stickers and all sorts of things like this, to create a sort of genuinely, I think, quite rich environment, or rich online interaction that is quite distinct from forms of interaction that take place, say, on Reddit or something, is more what my mind goes to there. So I'm thinking about, you're probably familiar with this distinction between the clear net, which is Reddit, essentially, kind of the clear net being the part of the internet that anyone can, that's public, essentially, that almost anybody can join and post on, compared to the dark forest, so-called. I mean, actually, the term the dark forest is beginning to sort of fall out of fashion now for various reasons, but Discords are a kind of part of the dark forest if we stick with that figure, because they are kind of unsearchable, kind of not public. You often either have to be invited to them or kind of join them for other reasons. And to me, but that's where some of this kind of more like, affectionate dimension takes place. But it's vital for the interaction, for certain DAOs to operate. And it's kind of not like baked into the central operation of smart contracts and all that kind of thing.
Thanks. Do we have any other questions? ¿Alguna pregunta más? Esther.
Hola, I'm going to say it in Spanish, sorry, Ross. Solo quería añadir que como participante de la DAO que hemos llevado a la práctica, para que también los que habéis venido aquí entendáis que creo que lo que está pasando con tu pregunta, no voy a hacer una pregunta nueva, es solamente decir que en español la palabra afecto la solemos asociar mucho a cómo nos queremos, ¿no? Qué tipo de cariño hay entre nosotros, ¿no? Por lo menos a mí se me va la mente ahí. Y que formar parte, esta es la primera vez que formo parte de una DAO o un prototipo de una DAO, que es esto, y ya se han creado unas relaciones totalmente distintas a las que tenemos con lo que está centralizado, que sería un banco, el gobierno, una empresa o cualquier otra cosa que hacemos en el día a día. Entonces, ya solo salirte, tener la oportunidad de que a través de una tecnología puedes hacer un contrato inteligente que te saque de decir esto es un intercambio monetario o lo tuyo por lo mío o algo así, ya está haciendo bastante. No tiene por qué haber una humanidad, un cariño o algo de eso, creo. Esa es mi percepción.
Creo que lo has dicho de una forma muy bonita. So, well, Esther was reflecting on the word affection, like she, in a way, like we don't know how much, like literally a DAO, Holy Bacter DAO is a DAO, like literally, no? But she was like reflecting on just the idea of like trying to prototype this kind of smart contracts outside the tech space and really like creating these bonds between the group and trying to make this DAO possible was also like for her is already like enacting affection through this kind of DAO that we've been reaching for. Anyway, so
I just remembered something else I was going to add actually to this into this question of affection. Kind of went from my mind when I was talking before. I noticed that you used, I think it must have been in one of your slides, you used the, forgive my pronunciation, but you used the word reencantar. And I think that kind of goes to the heart of this idea of affection. And maybe this was maybe what I was trying to get at the end of my talk, which is that crypto as a space tends to have the kind of disenchantment that one sees, elsewhere, but kind of like in a kind of speed run kind of way. And I think one of the ways that Holy Bacter DAO is very valuable is in this attempt to re-enchant. And I think the re-enchantment is maybe, or that push towards re-enchantment is a kind of necessity for forms of affection to be able to arise in a more robust way anyway. So I just wanted to sort of point out that the importance of that figure in my mind as well.
Thanks. So, is there any other question? Someone? Then I think we might be closing. Thank you, Ross, for participating in this talk. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for having me.
And hope to see you soon. I'll shift to Spanish to just like give a few info for closing the event. So, thanks. Y bueno, nada, antes de levantarnos, me gustaría expresar un súper agradecimiento al equipo de Media Lab, a todo el equipo, a mi grupo de investigación de Holy Bacter, que ha sido increíble trabajar con estas personas, también a Paula, la microbióloga con la que hemos trabajado, a Astro, a Raúl, a Manuela y bueno, a toda la gente que ha formado parte de este proyecto. Y antes de irnos, vamos a hacer una ceremonia de cierre en la que os vamos a invitar a preguntarle cosas al oráculo. Y va a ocurrir en 10 minutos. Así que ahí os esperamos. Gracias.